Okay, welcome everybody to the last lecture of this symposium. Today, after the lectures and workshop, we have been able to envision something of the grand inspiring view of the one boundless truth, defined as the true nature of all things, or the essence of life. And even if it's only a glimpse, only a thought of that vastness, it is a reflection of truth of what your consciousness is able to grasp so far. And this always leaves an unforgettable impression. Something is set in motion, even if we are not consciously aware of it at the moment. And if we continue to think it over, to ponder upon the infinity of life, the one truth, if we examine and verify it, and above all, apply it in our lives, our conception of reality will increase step by step. And as a result, we naturally unfold from within that inner truth more and more, approaching our most inner self on this path. And in the first two lectures, we spoke about a fundamental unity underlying everything, and how, from this spiritual foundation, everything is essentially equal and inextricably connected. And this is why brotherhood is a fact in nature. Another convention based on human emotion, but a fact based on the spiritual background of life itself. And if this realization would be living in everyone's heart, the world would look very different. A promising prospect, I think. But perhaps this all might sound like utopia, like wishful thinking, since what we see around us in daily life often appears to be just the opposite. Many of us live, think and act from a feeling of separateness. And this idea, this illusion of being separate from others, is the cause of all suffering and sorrow we are confronted with today. It therefore appears not to be easy at all in daily life to see everyone, under all circumstances, as equal and as a brother, and to approach them as such. Our ingrained thought patterns, often containing an element of us and them thinking, certainly play a role in this. But after today, we know that we have all potencies within to live according to truth, because we are this truth in essence. But the knowledge only of this doesn't mean being it yet, because what we are potentially, we have to yet become actively. So the next step is to consider what we need in order to do this. Let's have a closer look at what steps we have to take to continue our journey to become who we really are, and why we would go this inner journey in the first place. Well, Erwin already gave us the key for that in the previous lecture. Our consciousness is composite. We have a dual nature. There is something within us already being aware of the oneness or interconnectedness of life. But at the same time, there is a part of us that is not or less aware of the oneness of all life. In that case, you see yourself as separate from everything else. And we will go deeper into this composite nature of us in a moment. But what is important now is that we have to realize that what we are able to perceive of truth is determined by what part of our dual nature we appeal to in ourselves. Again, truth is what you are and not what you know. If you want to learn to ride a bicycle, for example, we can read all kinds of instructions about it, or exchange ideas with others. But it's only the moment we put our feet on the pedals ourselves that we become the cyclist. So, in order to approach truth and become it, there are some preconditions. A certain attitude to life is required. In the first place, allow wonderment. An open and inquiring mind, a truth-loving mind, is a first prerequisite. It is perhaps the most important precondition or attitude of life to comprehend truth. So what exactly do we mean by wonderment and an open mind? Well, we can never attain a broader view by limiting our ideas to those who formed our current vision. Or, as Einstein put it, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used creating them. In short, we must be open to expanding our thinking. Therefore, always be open for new thoughts. When you see something happen, what makes you wonder, cherish that moment. Do not form an opinion immediately. Don't judge too soon. But nourish that wonderment by investigating it. And this always entails an active approach. Why does something happen the way it happens? What is the underlying cause? What are the arguments and ideas of others about what we observe? It is an attitude in which you let go of all your biases, judgments and assumptions. You create space, so to speak, for new ideas to be examined. And each time new ideas broaden your vision, give it more depth, a previous partial truth will be expanded. In other words, truth, with a capital letter, is approached more and more because of wonderment and an open mind. This way, we continually progress in our understanding of truth. So don't just accept new ideas. That's certainly not what we mean by an open mind. But think it over. Examine ideas on their ethical value, universality, and logic, the three inner tools we mentioned in the second lecture. And if ideas do not meet these three criteria, there is no point in examining them any further. Another aspect concerning truth, and just watch any talk show after something happens in society, is that the focus is not so much on the message, but on the messenger who brings it. Instead of the message being examined on its logic and ethical value, the messenger is being judged. Well, if we keep the message central and approach it with an open mind, we create the right circumstance to come to the essence of the message. Another important criterion for approaching truth is to avoid being dependent on what others think or impose on us, even if they are authorities. It is important to learn to think independently, because truth cannot be imposed from outside, whether it be by a teacher or a book. Wisdom is something that comes from within. And of course, religious and philosophical traditions and people around us can inspire you. But this inspiration is only an outer stimulation to activate and express what is already present within. We need to do the necessary work ourselves. We have to experience it ourselves to independently build an inner conviction. Self-reliance prevents us from imitating or parroting others without really knowing what it's based on. A third aspect which is important is our spiritual willpower. And by this we do not mean a mechanical or external force, but a spiritual force that comes from within. The inner drive that propels us unceasingly to find truth. For it may happen that we don't experience truth just right away, or that we immediately oversee all the consequences. And think of the realization of peace in times of war, for example. This does not only require effort, but also a lot of patience, for which perseverance is essential. Things that are pleasant to us do not ask for perseverance. But when we have to crack a hard nut, we are often tempted, by lack of vision, to come up with excuses like, "What can I do about it? They do what they want anyway. I'll never manage to figure it out." Or, "It has always been that way." An attitude like that can result in indifference or despondency that isolate us more and more from our surroundings, causing us to become detached from them, experiencing less and less responsibility for them. And yet, we believe that we have to crack every karmic nut at some point. Because when ignoring it, we only postpone it to the future. The way we look at something, the truth that we live, always brings consequences. And we don't always have those in clear view. What is important here, that when you draw a certain conclusion, you then need the spiritual willpower to test these consequences in order to elaborate it further. And that is the only way to investigate whether that conclusion is correct. And testing means really living up to the consequences to experience whether it's correct or not. So we do not only need spiritual willpower to find truth, but also to live by it, expressing it. A great challenge for our present times, in which we are constantly distracted by all kinds of things, like smartphones, Instagram, or Facebook posts. There is often an unrestrained pursuit of sensations about all kinds of things happening around us that you want to be a part of. You want to have a feeling about something, an opinion. But seeking for sensations had nothing to do with finding truth. On the contrary, this pursuit creates restlessness, nervousness, and can lead to a situation where we become exhausted and unable to do anything. We become indifferent or despondent. Hence, we believe that spiritual willpower provides us the focus through which, together with those previous conditions, we are able to find truth. And when we use our willpower for truth finding, for universal, ethical, and logic ideas, we approach the truth with capitals more and more. We develop the faculty of insight that enables us to distinguish the illusion, the impermanence of outer material life, from the things that really matter. Things that support an harmonious world, in which tolerance and respect based on equality is a given. A world in which we treat each other as we ourselves want it to be treated. Well, the foregoing conditions contribute to the right attitude or mentality to find truth. And perhaps there are a few more, but there is one more we like to elaborate on now. And that is trust. And by this we don't mean a trust in external systems or anything, but a trust in our own capacities, our own knowledge, our conscience and intuition. A confidence that grows correspondingly with the realization that we essentially are the boundless truth. That truth comes from within, and we are capable of becoming it more and more. And it is this faith, knowing what we essentially are, which gives us the trust or confidence. And since this deepest essence is the same in everyone, this confidence applies also for our fellow man, indeed for all life. In conclusion, when these conditions, these attitudes are embedded in our life, and as you see, these are not rules or conduct or prescriptions, but it is rather a matter of mentality. And then we create an harmonious mindset to make all doubt disappear. Because you know that whatever challenge we face together, there is a solution if we go inwards. All we have to do is to activate, to express what is already within. And having this attitude, we no longer judge others. We don't exclude anyone, no matter the mistakes he makes. No, we will do everything we can to get ourselves or the other back on track to his inner core. Okay, so far we have seen that independent search for truth is directly related to the independent unfolding and activation of inner faculties. And the quality of truth is determined by which faculties we appeal to within ourselves. A clear discernment of these inner faculties is key when we want to find and live truth consciously and independently. So let's take a closer look now at those inner faculties. As briefly touched upon earlier, our constitution is composed of 3 parts. In this diagram, we will show what these parts represent and how they cooperate as an integral unity to express truth. And when we understand how this works, we are able to choose to work with it. In other words, to live truth. First of all, we have an imperishable part within us, which in itself is a reflection of the one reality. And this imperishable part, we have all those limitless qualities latently waiting to be developed and consciously expressed. The lower part of our constitution is the transitory part. This transient part is our vehicle through which we express ourselves in this world. And as you can see, we are not our body, but we have a body. Then the middle part, our learning part. That is what we are as human beings, what we have unfolded so far from our infinite core. And this part is the intermediary between the imperishable part and the transitory part. The learning part in our constitution is the link to our inner source of truth, the imperishable part. Let's zoom in on our learning part, because we can recognize that it has a dual nature. One part, identifies with the body, with our transitory part. So we call it YOLO. You only live once, since this transitory part disintegrates at the end of life. The other part identifies with the imperishable part. That part we call the inner truth seeker. And here lies a challenge for us as a learning part. Do we choose to be the YOLO or the truth seeker? What do you identify with? What is your reality? What do you want to be? If you identify yourself with the YOLO, then the transient part is your reality, who you think you are. But does this have an everlasting value? Is the most important thing in life to achieve your personal desires? Is that the focus of your life, around which everything else resolves? Or do you identify yourself with the truth seeker, with all your accumulated insights and lessons learned in past lives? Your sense of unity and justice, your universal ideals and noble thoughts. As a truth seeker, you're always looking upwards. Your spiritual willpower reflecting a constant striving to stimulate all life to move forward. And each time we connect with that truth seeker, we connect to the imperishable part in us, the link to infinity, the boundless life. And each time, doing this, we lift a veil. We unfold more of the boundless potentiality of our imperishable source. And realize the imperishable part in us is already constantly active. Its influence comes to us through the truth seeker. We all recognize this influence when we describe it. For example, when you observe injustice, you feel heartache because what you see, what you feel or experience is against everything you already know inwardly. Your conscience comes into play. Your sense of unity and justice is called into play. You want to do something about the injustice. And when you hold this aspiration and you ask yourself, how can I eliminate this injustice or sorrow? And you long to know the answer, then you open the gateway to your heart. And through the truth seeker, your conscience, your intuition, the right universal, logical and ethical ideas can come true that lead to the elevation of suffering. So it is the influence of the heart that always makes us strive for harmony. That sphere of influence stimulates us to restore disturbance or disharmony out of compassion. So considering all this, who you really are in essence, eternal and imperishable, that stimulates us to understand that we are much more than we think we are. We are a reflection of the boundlessness. But there is another challenge awaiting us here. As long as we have not yet mastered or ennobled the YOLO within us, or ennobled it to the truth seeker, we will be confronted with the inner conflicts. And these are the moments when we ignore the influence of our conscience and intuition. Ignoring what we already know inwardly evokes inner conflict. Our conscience speaks. The challenge now is for the truth seeker within to be in charge of the YOLO, to master it. And it is not rejecting or compelling the YOLO, but stimulating it to function in such a way that the noble influence of the higher can be expressed. Until they merge, so to speak, or work together like fingers on one hand. And when we succeed in this, inner conflicts no longer occur, but inner harmony will prevail. And this is, of course, a process of growth. In the previous lecture we showed this in a diagram. The cyclical process of finding truth before we reach that inner harmony. And remember that until we reach that inner harmony, we can learn from our inner challenges. Our mistakes will be opportunities to learn. And every time we stumble at the moment of weakness, we just get back on our feet and move on. But then, each time a little more enriched with lessons learned from it. So finally, have an open mind. Be self-reliant and independent. Deploy your spiritual willpower and have faith in the truth seeker within yourself, so that we not deviate from the path anymore. All this is an inner process that does not depend on outer circumstances. When we love truth, identify with the truth seeker in us, when we start living that truth, then we will gain deeper insight. We learn to recognize the connection, connectedness and causality. Then we know how to implement those universal and ethical ideas. We realize that not all problems can be solved immediately, but we have patience and self-confidence, because these trials can not always be met in one lifetime. It takes thoughts and effort across lives. And together with that indomitable spiritual willpower, we will make every effort to realize those universal insights. And when we identify with that truth seeker, we will share our insights naturally. Because ceaselessly focusing on it, we carry that sense of oneness with us. Our focus opens, so to speak, the treasure of nature into which the voice of the silence whispers to us. If thou would have that stream of hard-earned knowledge, of wisdom heaven-born, remain sweet running waters, thou should not leave it to become a stagnant pond. Its pure fresh waters must be used to sweeter make the ocean's bitter waves, that mighty sea of sorrow, formed of the tears of men. Point out the way, as does the evening star to those who tread their path in darkness. Thank you for your attention. We will discuss these thoughts further in the workshop. Ilyich will tell you more about it.